Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast, sponsored by Excelsior Music Publishing at excelsiormusic.com and Premier Music Teaching Aids. This is episode 359. I'm here with Peter Sciaino. All right, Peter, you're a band director in New Jersey, as well as a accomplished composer in the jazz and classical side of things, the band side of things. How did that come to be? Because I think of people who write in both idioms, and there's not a lot of you. Right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So, I guess you could say I was always interested in composition from early on, but I kind of got into the jazz stuff as like a middle schooler and high schooler, and that sort of was my bread and butter, I guess you could say, or my main interest. And it's not like I left all the concert band stuff by the wayside. As we all know, growing up in school band programs, you're doing a little bit of everything. But I spent my summers pursuing, jazz programs and things like that. And so when I went into music education, I always thought that that was a kind of a secret weapon. Like I had some good experience in something that not necessarily all band directors are super comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started writing music a little bit, I felt really confident about my jazz writing because I'd studied it a lot, and I actually ended up getting a master's degree in jazz composition. But I kind of didn't want to be labeled as just the jazz guy because I thought I had a lot to offer in the concert band world too. And maybe some of that music had some jazz influence, which would be interesting to people, or, anyway, I could draw on a few different, abilities, I guess you could say. So I started writing concert band music, actually submitted stuff to publishing companies on the concert band side first. I kind of wanted that to get out there first so people wouldn't call me like the jazz guy.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think there are some examples of some really great writers who can write jazz and, concert band music or orchestra music or whatever it might be really, really well, but kind of people don't necessarily choose their concert music because they think of them as the jazz person, you
Yep.
know. So,
So most of today, what we're going to work with is a new book that you have outright called Two Chord Jams, which we're going to talk about the improvisation, the art of teaching improvisation and how this book can help with that and all that. And then we're going to check out four of your pieces as well on the classical side and sorry, on the band side and the jazz band side. I
cool.
think grade three all the way down to grade, I forget, 1.5. Yeah, well,
Sure.
and a grade is Sounds from the Deep a grade one or 1.5?
It's actually it's listed as a 1.5, but I think it's a very playable 1.5. Yeah.
Okay. So we're doing some, level for not for everybody. If you're teaching beginning band, maybe not, but for a lot of people. Lastly, before we get into the two chord jams, advice for people who are maybe band directors like you and I are, and also maybe thinking about, I kind of would like to do some composing as well. Maybe what would you tell them if they haven't started or kind of got anywhere with it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you can be a really effective writer if you're writing for school groups from the perspective of a band director. I think there's no secret about that. Obviously people who are choosing music are looking for things that are going to work for their groups and be have some educational value and some teaching moments. And I think that we can all do that. With the more experience we've had, the better we are at that. And so I would say to give it a shot, start writing stuff, but you know, be humble. The first thing you write is probably not going to be great, and be patient with that, and hand it out to your kids, and use them as sort of like a test subject, and they will love it. In most cases, especially if you have a good relationship with your students, they're going to be really excited that you wrote something for them, and they're going to want to know more about it. And maybe they'll start trying to write some stuff and be inspired and realize that this isn't just something that some person does that I've never heard of, and it's actually something that can be done. So I would say, be patient, don't expect great results early on, and you know, kind of go about it that way. And once you get to a point where you think it's pretty good, maybe start, passing it out to some friends, and get some feedback, and pursue it. I mean, I think the reality is, and I always say this because some people ask me, but nobody needs us to, like, nobody needs me to write band music. There's plenty of great band music. Like if I didn't exist, there would still be school bands, right? So I think that we have to be humble and know that when we're writing something, we're trying to find something that is very playable, something that people can use, but maybe something that's a little different, and something that might be of use in a different way than something that's already out there. So try to find your niche in there. Try to find your angle, I guess.
A message I'd like to give to band directors is, and I heard this from the composer Andrew Boyce Jr., is that as a um, seasoned band director, you are very prepared to be a composer, more prepared than you think. That if you're used to studying scores, you're used to breaking scores apart and teaching them to bands and building and performing and all that. You have a lot of the nuts and bolts structural stuff that goes on in a piece. So even if you're not a quote unquote trained composer, you actually probably know more than you think if you're
Oh
looking to get
yeah.
started. Yeah.
I love that. And also you're creative. I mean, the majority of band directors that I know are super creative people because you're structuring lessons, you're trying to engage students, there's creativity in all that stuff. So just try to apply it to, to the writing. And then I think you could probably be pretty good at it.
I
Yeah.
love that. All right, let's switch over to the jazz improvisation side of things. So
Sure.
two chord jams is a book that's coming out with Excelsia. Is it out currently?
It is. I
It's out.
have
Yeah.
I happen to have a prop right here if you know.
So for those watching on YouTube can see that. I'm just gonna quick statement here. Teaching improvisation in a systematic way includes thinking about how we teach improvisation and building skills. When it comes to chords, changing chords can be worked on using a single chord in isolation and can be used in alternating chords. So like a lot of us, we look at chord changes and we just like try to teach those chord changes, but you can also take each chord separately. You can take the chords in an elongate, like 8 bars each, 4 bars each, stretch them out and really work on systematically being able to play with chord changes. So in your book, obviously by the title, each track is only 2 chords and it alternates, right?
Correct.
Are
Yes.
they, can you talk about the duration of each chord? Or is each one like a
Yeah.
measure, or does that change throughout?
There's a variety of options, and that's kind of speaking to what you're talking about. I actually find that the kind of quick background of the project was that when I'm a high school band director, and so when I'm writing or when I'm warming up or working with the jazz ensemble for many years, I've done sort of like a lead sheet a week approach. Where, we'll find a tune. Sometimes it's a tune that maybe we're going to do an arrangement of as a big band, but oftentimes it's not. And it's a chance for everybody to learn a new tune. It's a chance for everybody to sight read something. And it's an opportunity to have unison playing at the beginning of the rehearsal, which I think is a great way to start, right? We're working on phrasing together. We're working on articulations. We're working on all that stuff with everybody playing the same notes and rhythms. So that's kind of, you know, the beginning of how this worked. And then we would start to break down the lead sheet. And high schoolers are pretty good at some point, well, at least most high schoolers who have some experience with, harmonic studies of some kind, or even just scale, working at knowing their scales. They can be pretty, good at getting through some changes. Sometimes, maybe not the most complex changes, but they can get through a few different scales. You can talk about modes with some students. It kind of depends on what their entry point is.
Mm.
What I found is that over time, when I was asked to maybe work with a middle school or I was working with our second band, that wasn't a guarantee, right? Students were not necessarily going to be really,
Right.
really comfortable
Yeah.
with all that harmonic stuff and scales and language like that. So I was trying to find a way to introduce a similar approach, but with with less chords. And so I started writing some tunes that only had two different chords, but still were unison. So it's kind of like a lead sheet study. What you'll also know is that the challenges there became with the rhythm section, because the younger rhythm sections were not necessarily comfortable reading lead sheets. They didn't know how to really appropriately voice a D minor seventh chord, and if they did, they didn't necessarily know how to do it with a great voicing. It might just be a stack. And so I thought there was some room in this approach for writing something that might be useful for younger bander and not necessarily middle school. It's real. I say younger, meaning like your experience. I mean, there's some high school programs where the director doesn't really have the opportunity to work on improvisation outside of a rehearsal. And as we all know, that can be complicated. I'm sure we'll get into that.
Hmm.
And so I thought, like, there's probably a way to introduce this with less chords that move around in, like you said, various ways, whether it be every bar, every 2 bars, every 4 bars, and get students a little bit more comfortable navigating less changes, right? Less is more. And so that was sort of the approach.
I love it. And when you say unison band warm up, right? We think that's great in concert band, but in jazz band, it's just as great. I mean, I put 3 exclamation points next to when you wrote that. I think that's great. And as people may know, lead sheets oftentimes are suggested rhythms, but you wouldn't actually play them in that rhythm. So the lead sheets that you wrote, the tunes you wrote, are they like to be played as is?
So the ones in the book, you mean?
Yeah. So, but I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, like a lot of times you see autumn leaves, you're not going to play two, three, four,
sure.
one, right?
Yeah, right, right. I guess yes, they are because I guess we're trying to bridge the gap between, there's always been a sort of a disconnect with the high school big band and then most of the jazz that we might hear if we're into listening to jazz. The majority of study that you'll do as a student who's looking to go study jazz is going to be in small groups, right? You're going to be working on heads, lead sheets, chord changes, improvisation. Then you go to the big band and you have to read. And then there might be a solo section,
Mm.
but it's a little different. So I think that we're always sort of at odds with that. And so the idea behind, incorporating improvisation was kind of key. But anyway, so in the book, yes, I write it sort of like a lead sheet that you're supposed to read the correct rhythm of. That said, if you're this book can be used with, a full big band, it can also be used with a combo very effectively, or even like a couple of students, or even one student, a private student you might be working with. And in that case, interpretation of these melodies, I'm all for that. I mean, I think that could be a looser approach for sure.
Did you base any of these chords on any standard tunes, or did you just base them on kind of standard harmonic chord progressions that are used?
Right, right. Yes and no. I mean, harmonically, yes. I would say melodically, not necessarily.
Yeah.
There's a variety of styles in the book. Like there's swing tunes, there's funk tunes, there's Latin. There's we do different things there because I think it's important to navigate changes in different styles for obvious reasons, and also for the rhythm section to understand. Oftentimes the rhythm section is given, and then we could have a whole separate podcast about the rhythm section, but the rhythm
Yes.
section is is asked to like, not only figure out the chords or what have you, they have to figure out what their rhythmic approach is going to be, and they also have to figure out what the rhythmic approach is going to be within each other. Like the piano player can't step on what the guitarist is doing, and so on and so forth. And so I think in this book, what I'm able to do, or what I was hoping to do, is come up with some sort of examples for the rhythm section. So I don't just write whole notes or just the chord. I'll actually write actual rhythms out that they're supposed to follow, and I try to mix it up.
Mhm.
So anyway, getting back to your original question, are some of these based on tunes? They're certainly based on what we've all, some classics that we all know and love, but the melodies are always different because most of the tunes have more than two chords, as you can imagine. And but I try to use obviously and we can get into the nuts and bolts of what kinds of chords they are, but there's three examples of two fives in there that can be applied to almost any swing tune that you could find in a certain era of jazz writing. And then there's kind of the beginning of the one chord and the four chord of a blues, so there's things that we're taking from other tunes, but not necessarily based on one single tune. One of the ideas when I hand out footprints as a lead sheet study, it's always funny because like the beginning of footprints, people are like, yeah, I got this. There's two chords that go back and forth. They're navigating the changes. Then it gets to a moment where it changes harmonically and the solos always suffer. And so that was kind of an idea behind like, oh, if we could, let's just work on this part. And that was great. But, if you don't have enough time to get through the whole tune, it's not satisfying. You want to have a whole tune at the end of the session that you're practicing, and maybe something that you want to actually perform, not just rehearse and learn a tune. And so that was, that was kind of the idea too. So it's based on some of those tunes, but it's certainly not taken in a very literal way, I guess
So
you could
you have
say.
an example where you'll have like what's the 2/5? Do you use like C minor and F alternating?
Typically, I chose like B flat, E flat, and F as like my what would be the one chord.
Yep.
Right. So if I'm the key of F, I've got the G minor and I'm going to the C7. So the two chords are actually the G minor and the 2/7. We don't actually, I'm sorry, the G minor and the C7. We don't actually land on the F. But there is another chart, it's actually a ballad, where it simulates a 5 to a 1. And it's in one of those keys also. So like throughout the course of the book, when you're reading through it, you're going to get hints of all those different things. And with some good planning and finding a couple of big band tunes or something, if you want to go to that next level and add a third chord or, beyond that, you certainly can. But part of the idea, I think when we're talking about improvisation and band, we've probably all done something, or at least tried to do, maybe not all of us, but we hopefully have thought about how we could try to do something. And we might take a tune that we're working on and work on the changes of that tune and have everybody work on it and so on. That's a great approach because obviously you can apply it. But I wanted something that was a little easier maybe than some of those tunes, and you could still perform it. So that's the other thing about this book is that it's 100% performable music. So if you're spending 15 to 20 minutes on it in a rehearsal, that 15 to 20 minutes isn't just going toward getting to be a better improviser, and which is great, but it also can be something that you're in a couple of weeks going to put on a concert because it's got a lead line, it's got two background parts for backgrounds of solos or backgrounds of the melody, and it's got a full accompaniment of chords and suggested scales that they could use on it. So you can really turn these into fully performable tunes very, very easily.
I think the concept of a jazz band warm up that teaches kids how to be better improvisers, better musicians, that also goes along with what they're doing with music is great. I mean, those are things that a lot of us just don't think about, right? Like we're doing these tunes and they're already warmed up, quote unquote. Here we go. I don't subscribe to that, but I know a lot of people do. I think
Yeah.
the fact that you could also, if people see what you do here, they could also, if they have another tune that they're doing, they could take the same approach. They could take a part of a tune, and do that separately as well. So not
Yes.
not to take your work, but the concept could apply outside of the book
Yeah,
as
I hope it
well.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope it does. That's kind of the whole idea. I mean, I recognize that I'm not saying you can't write a great tune with only two chords. I'd like to think that a lot of these tunes are kind of fun and kids, it doesn't feel limiting. It doesn't feel like I wish there was one more chord in these. I tried to make it so it was cool,
Hmm.
and wasn't just, sounding like it was back and forth between the same harmonic ideas. But yeah, for sure, I think you could certainly do that. And one thing about not to step on what you're saying, the scales that I suggest for the different, I give one suggested scale for each chord, whether it be a F sus7 or a B flat minor 7 or whatever it might be. All of them are numbered. I don't know if you ever heard, there's a great book, Bop by the Numbers, where you're
Mm.
like, each you're basically trying to teach a group of students who are transposing in all different keys. So like how we've all done it. It's like, okay, you're on E flat, you're on F, it's confusing and you lose them when you're not addressing everybody at the same time. Well, now you're saying, okay, guys, pattern is 1, 2, 3, 5. We're going to follow these changes. There's your suggested scale. Everybody can see what their 1, 2, 3, 5 is. We're going to swing it. Boba doo dot. Here we go. And 1, 2, 3, and navigate to changes that way. And you could do that on any tune. And you could do it with more than two chords for sure as they get more comfortable with the scales.
So the way that you've arranged these can basically be self-arranged by the teachers as well, right? You can decide who wants to play some of the background parts and who wants to play the melodies. You can kind of customize these for your individual situation as you play them.
Absolutely. And for example, you could have nobody play the backgrounds during the melody and save the backgrounds for underneath the soloists. Say, okay, guys, second chorus for each soloist, we're going to do the backgrounds. And when I keep saying backgrounds, just to be clear, there are two backgrounds. Basically, they're all the same rhythm, but they're harmonized. So background one and background two, it gives it a little bit more texture. It sounds a little bit more mature and sounds more like an arrangement that way. But you could also say, okay, when we come out of the melody and we go the solos and we go back to the head, trombones are playing backgrounds, trumpets, you guys are playing the melody, and it could be sort of like a more of a shout version of that head. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
so yeah, it's totally flexible in terms of how you arrange. You could have a featured soloist. Your lead alto is playing the head, everybody else is playing the backgrounds the first time. When we come back out of the solo, everybody's playing the melody. It's very customizable.
And it does come with downloadable backing tracks if people are in the position where they obviously, even if you have a full band, you want to use those for kids to practice with.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it comes with the downloadable backgrounds, which is I think key to the whole thing. Like you said, students might be inspired to go practice it on their own.
I have my work cut out for me because we're going to transition from talking about improvisation in a jazz band setting to a triangle feature in a concert band piece. But so now we're going to go on to four of your pieces. And this piece that I heard it a few weeks ago, and I sent it to my wife, and I'm like, you need to do this. It's called Ding. It's
Yep.
grade 1.5 with triangle soloist, which I didn't even read what you said. I just heard it and I'm like, this has to be an administrator. Like, this has to be teachers. It has to be community members, like whatever. It's a perfect
Yep.
example. I don't assume you didn't mean it as like a holiday piece, but totally would work as a holiday piece.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, it's purposely not a holiday piece specifically because I don't want anybody to feel pigeonholed into putting it at a certain time of year.
Mhm.
But yeah, it works on it looks appropriate on a program, if you will,
Yeah.
for sure. And it's a festive way to, to involve, like you said, somebody outside of your band program or, on the periphery of your band program, for sure.
Um, we're gonna listen to the whole piece. A lot of times on these, I only listen to a section of it, but I want people to hear the end for sure. So how did this come about? Like, how did you get the idea of writing a triangle soloist with? And this could be one person, or like you could have 10 people, right? You could have like a group,
Absolutely.
like anything.
I've actually, I've seen people have sent me a couple of examples that they've done because it's been out. This is the first year it's been out. It's been out for 2025, 26. And some people have sent me a link to, some videos on YouTube of what they did because when we did it, my editor at Winger Jones, Tyler Arcari said, you should do a video of yourself doing it so that people can see because there's some sight gags that you could include it if you want. And actually, I wrote a whole procedures, if you will,
Hmm.
on something that in the score so that a band director could copy it for a non-musician. You don't have to be able to read music to do the ding, the band, it's all very spelled out in a non-musical way for people too. But there's some gags that you can include. So the visual was helpful. And so when I put that on YouTube, people took saw that and responded sometimes, hey, I did it too, and here's how we did it. And I thought, great, I love have fun with it. And some people have done it with multiple people or alternating who gets to do the ding or who gets to yell at everybody. It probably sounds like a ridiculous tune, and I guess it kind of is. But the inspiration was that like, you know, we're oh, it's very easy to, not okay, it's not very easy, but it's more common where you might bring in an administrator or somebody else as a narrator in some way, and that is it's always a nice touch. And so, as I was, navigating those pieces for navigate, and I've done those pieces as well. We've had our, principal come in and do some speaking parts, whether it be Lincoln Portrait or what have you. And I thought like there's probably a really funny way to do this with younger students, and kind of I have a former student who's an administrator, and he's so personable, and the kids, love him in his middle school where he's the actually he's the superintendent now, but he often will bring his trombone and play with the kids, and I was like, well, what if somebody's not a musician in that way? We still
Mhm.
we still got to get them up there, and so that was sort of the inspiration, I guess you could say, find a way to get everybody involved.
And even though this is a grade 1.5, it's you could have a grade 3 band and do it as a comedy thing,
Oh, yes, most people have been
Yeah.
groups that because it's not too much for them to prepare to add a lot of spice to a concert,
Yeah.
right? Let's put it that way. They can still focus on their contest work that they're doing over the course of the school year, but then they're like, hey, let's do this triangle solo and bring in Mr. or Mrs. whoever and have some fun on the concert also. Yeah.
I also wanted to mention there's a great composer. I don't know if you've heard of him, named Dan Buckfitch. He's written tons of great music, and he always said it's easy as a composer to make people cry. It's hard to make people laugh. So when you hear a piece that makes people laugh, it's got value in it, even if it's just for that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, let's check it out. Here's a full recording of Ding. Okay, the second piece we're going to do is also grade one, or did you say one and a half? This is
It's
called,
a 1.5. Yeah.
yeah, this is Sounds from the Deep. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yes, this is a new one, just released actually in May, and it's a grade 1.5, but a very playable grade 1.5 in my opinion. Actually, I started writing it as a grade one, and realized that I could add a lot to it. It could be really elevated as a 1.5, but keeping some demands easier. So the approach is that the inspiration is, as you can imagine, the ocean and maybe some of the more murky waters
Hmm.
that the deepest depths of the ocean. And I saw that as an opportunity to try to highlight some of our lower voices a little bit. I wouldn't call it a feature of the low reeds and low brass, but they really carry the most of the melodic content throughout the whole thing. And I thought that that was a really fun way to feature those sections who maybe aren't. Oh, I mean, you could find good music for those sections, but maybe not always given the melody first and foremost. And it also could obviously provide sort of a different sound on a given concert. At the grade 1.5 level, I know everybody approaches it a little bit differently, depending on the what you're trying to do. I depend on which groups you want to challenge. One thing I always try to do is have a little bit of a lyrical moment. I wouldn't say a lyrical section. It may not be a full, B section, and it might just be one or two phrases. But the grade ones, when it's appropriate, it's a little harder to do because you have less voices, less harmonic options. When you get into the grade 1.5, and now you have two trumpet parts and two clarinet parts, I feel like it's an opportunity not only to expand, the texture of the harmonic stuff, but it's also a good challenge for the students to do that in a slower moment, or maybe in a more, longer phrase. Sometimes when we split into having two trumpets or two clarinet parts, especially trumpets, we're going so quick they may not necessarily even notice that they're on two different pitches, especially if the first trumpet's playing a written C and the second trumpet's playing a written G. They might all be playing C's or G's, and we don't necessarily even pick up on it until we have a sectional with them or whatever. So having a little lyrical moment for them to really hear the different moment, or slow it down a little bit, whether maybe not the tempo slowing down, but maybe the rhythms slow down a little bit. That gives them an opportunity to kind of breathe into that a little bit. So that was sort of the approach.
And I think a piece like this, Sounds from the Deep, really, you should lean into the imagery portion of this, whether it's imagery you make up or use photos or use imagination. I think there's so much there when you talk about the murky depths of the ocean, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
that's so cool. I think kids would so maybe, and you can, go with a science teacher and help out with that and whatever. So
Oh yeah, right. Combine it with a cross content, with your science teacher going to the aquarium or whatever it
yeah.
might be. I
All
don't
right.
know.
All right.
It hopefully fits that sound. I think it did
Okay, let's
pretty
take a
well.
listen. Here it is. Austin Custom Brass has a unique line of doublers instruments that are perfect for students, band programs, and players of all ages. Their doublers flugelhorn is the most popular selling instrument they have, available in 5 different finishes. These flugelhorns come in cases, and the Austin Custom Brass Fab 5 mouthpiece. The doublers flugelhorn offers a quality sound, playability, and affordability. Get one for yourself or your whole trumpet section. Call Austin Custom Brass, find them online, or call them at 816-410-0826. Austin Custom Brass works with band programs from all over the country, and they can provide a bid to you today, work with your school's budget, and accepts POs. Call their team today, 816-410-0826, or email them at info@austincustombrass.com. Do you spend valuable time all year correcting your student's hand position instead of focusing on the music? Thumb Gummy solves that. These simple, cost-effective teaching aids fit on trumpets and trombones to guide the right hand into proper playing position, reducing tension, improving form, and giving tactile feedback so students can focus on playing, not adjusting. It's easy to use, comfortable, and designed by teachers and players for beginners as well as older students. Join thousands already seeing the difference, and keep an eye out for our new clarinet thumb rest coming soon. Visit thumbgummy.com to learn more. That's thumbgummy.com. Amano Music is a proud sponsor of the Growing Band Director podcast. If you're a band director looking for a clear path to grow your program, take a look at the Band Director's Goal Setting Planner. It helps you map out your priorities, organize your year, and stay focused on the things that truly move your program forward. Inside the planner, you'll find tools for long-term planning, weekly goal setting, reflection, and building stronger support systems for your students and community. You can find the Band Director's Goal Setting Planner at amanomusic.com. That's AAMANO music.com. And listeners to the Growing Band Director podcast receive a special 10% discount by entering the code GBD10 at checkout. That's GBD and the number 10 at checkout. Kaiser Productions is honored to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. As a publisher for Ludwig Masters and Southern Music, they uphold a proud tradition of outstanding musicianship. They share your passion for teaching through performance at all levels with music and resources for band and flexible instrumentation. Their catalog has essential literature by Francis Macbeth, James Barnes, and Frederick Fennell, as well as exciting new works, many by composers who've been guests on this very podcast. Whether you're looking for timeless classics, fresh new works, or your next contest piece, look no further than Kaiser Productions at kaiserproductions.com. That's KEISERproductions.com. All right, band directors, let's just be honest for a second. You're not actually chasing missing tuners every day. You're chasing bad tone and poor intonation. And your beginners, well, they're trying, but half the time they don't even know what in tune is supposed to sound like. That's exactly why Mark Casperson created the Tuner Caddy, a place for everything. And now Performance Packs makes this a no-brainer. Each pack includes a tuner caddy and a 60M tuner and metronome with batteries and a 6-foot microphone. So every student has what they need right on hand, right on the stand, ready to go. No excuses, no guessing, just better playing. And here's the part that makes directors stop and stare. The cost is less than most tuners alone. Programs across the country, from beginner bands to Midwest and TMEA stages, are using Tuner Caddy to build real student ownership of intonation and ear training. They'll even help you do it with a free support packet that shows you how to set up a system that actually works, plus resources for local education grants to help fund it. So you can keep chasing bad sound all rehearsal, or you can fix the system. Visit tunercaddy.com or talk to your local or national music retailer. Tuner Caddy, a place for everything. We're going to go on to the jazz side of things now. One of my favorite new charts that I just heard in prepping for this week is Groovezilla, which has just come out as well. Grade 3. It's G minor, right? Am I right that it's a G minor tune?
Yep.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
lots of G minor, C minor, and some D in there. I'm not trying to overly simplify it, but
Yeah.
it's so cool. Tell us a little bit about this piece.
Yeah, thanks. So it's a chart that was actually, it's a commission that I did for a band in Texas, Brownsville, Texas, the Stillman Middle School Band, who just great people. David Ramirez is the band director. They're a great band director, and their jazz band was the invited jazz band for the TMEA clinic convention this past February. And so last summer, he reached out and my good friend Willie Owens gave him my number because he was connected with the Brownsville district over the years, and suggested that I could write something for their jazz band. And so, that's where it started. And he was interested in a tune that we were talking about different things. Then I said, well, what has been successful? What have you enjoyed playing? And he said that, he hadn't programmed anything else yet. So he wanted, I had kind of like the ability to write anything, whether it be the swing tune or blues or whatever. But he really wanted it to stand out on the program, as like something they could kind of close with and what have you. And he mentioned, as a student growing up and when he was working with a high school band, that he really loved the chart Count Bubba's Revenge, the Gordon Goodwin chart.
Yep.
And we all know that one, have heard it, but the thing he liked about it is it has a section feature for each section, trumpets, trombones, saxophones, so on and so forth. So he wondered if there was a way to do that. And I thought that was a great idea. But that those tunes can get a little lengthy, especially for a middle school group, because now, a lot of the big part of the challenge of advanced charts is that they might be a little bit more lengthy. And one of the things you try to do to make things a little easier for the groups is to have it not quite be as long. And so I was trying to figure out a way to incorporate both section features, but also have some solo moments for some of the kids that he wanted to highlight. And so came up with this kind of funky, shuffly, groove, kind of swingish, funkish sound, and ran it by him as far as the tempo and the groove, and it said, "Is this enough to go on so that you could program the rest of your stuff?" And it was. And then I wrote some solo sections, and I found ways to like do a short 2 or 3 bar moment within the section feature for a single person in that section. So there's the sax soli, but he had a bari player he wanted to feature, so we threw a 2.5 bar bari solo in the middle of the sax soli, and it actually worked out, pretty well, I think. And I kept doing that throughout the sections, and then they premiered it, and they did an awesome job with it, and I had sent it to Blair Belowski over at Excelsia and said, "What do you think of this chart?" And he said, "Let's put it out we'll get it done so we have a copy of it to show at TMEA, and we'll put it on this catalog right away and get some momentum with it." And I thought that was awesome. And so it just came out, and yeah, I hope it does. I hope people like it. I'm pretty excited about it. Oh, and side note, little plug for the Stillman guys. They just got accepted. They're going to be playing at Midwest next year too. So I'm so excited for them. It's a great group and a great band, and I appreciate their commission on this one.
I love that. Let's check it out. Here's Groovezilla. And a note on that for people who heard those solis, if you have a section that you want to avoid because you don't have that section in your band, he has, places where you can cut so you don't have to have all of the solis. I think that's super smart because we've all been in that position, right? It's like, and I love this chart, but it doesn't quite fit. So, I mean, that goes to another bigger thing that as a band director and a composer, but a lot of people don't know this. Like, you can alter charts to fit your band as long as you're not
Oh
changing the
yeah.
intent of the music. Alter things, revoice things, help it out so that it's right for your kids. I mean, every composer wants that for their chart. So,
Oh, absolutely. You want your music to be played ultimately, and you want to be writing something that's helpful for the band director. So I give them carte blanche.
before we listen to your last piece, Peter, any
Mhm.
advice that you might have for younger band directors?
I think first and foremost, like younger band directors, I think that, you're going to come out or you've been teaching a couple of years and there's going to be a moment where you feel like I don't know if stagnant's the right word, but maybe like, okay, I've first couple of years I've figured out how to do what I'm currently doing, but how do I either take my group to the next level or how do I, mix it up so that, students it stays fresh or whatever it might be. And I think that in my case, it was trying to find something like a creative outlet for myself. And that's when I started writing for the group. And so for me, who had an interest in writing, I brought that in to my work. I kind of was able to adapt the job a little bit to fit what I was, lacking, I guess you could say, in a personal way, but I thought could benefit the group. And I think there are ways to do that outside of just writing for your band. But I think it's important for a band director to find ways to keep themselves really invested. Obviously, you're always going to, I'm not suggesting you wouldn't be invested in just teaching students and seeing the pride that comes with seeing them grow as musicians
But
and
it
be
can get
excited
it can
about
get
it.
monotonous. I mean, we have all
For
been there.
sure. Yeah, like any subject, man. I always think that we have an advantage because at least we could change up our programs and so on and so forth. If I'm teaching math, I'm always chapter 14. Here we go. It's there's not a lot I can bring to it that's
Yeah.
much different. Um, or at least not as much with the music. We have a little bit more flexibility, but there are things that you can do, that may not be just writing for your group that could be really, fun. Whether it be starting a different kind of group, but let's have a sax, ensemble this year, or just for a year, or whatever it might be. Trying to find something that, assuming you're a sax player, I was thinking like, something that would keep you engaged in a way that's different and kind of get a little pep in your step when you walk out to work in the morning.
Beautiful. Well, Peter, thank you
Mm.
for being here. We're going to listen to one other piece before we head out. I urge people to check out more of your music that we've not listened to, reach out to you, have you write stuff. It's just great, interacting with composers, especially composers who are band directors. So thank you for that.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
so we heard Hush. Which group played Hush? Was it the group from Kentucky?
Yes,
Um,
that's correct. Lafayette High
Lafayette
School
High School. Yeah, it
from
was
Lexington,
yeah.
Kentucky. Yeah, they're a great group. Great
Yeah,
group.
and
They
their band
play.
director is actually from Maine. We went to the high school, like I can literally see the town from here that he went
Yes,
to.
yes, that's
Right?
right.
Chris Strange.
Chris, yes, Chris Strange. He
That,
was awesome,
that
and
was a lot of fun.
yeah, we didn't agree with our sports team's interests, but we got along quite well otherwise.
Um, so Hush is a grade 1.5 walking ballad, right? Piano intro, sort of in the Lil Darlin-esque um kind of thing. But what I love about not just this piece, but pieces of this style is that teaching the slow triplet swing. I mean,
Yeah,
I was trying to teach slow swing and I didn't realize that the triplet was the key to that, right?
yeah,
So finding ways to use the triplet, vocalizing it, because the third triplet is the one that is the second eighth note, right? Doodle lay, doodle.
correct.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and this is written like you couldn't have hit it more on the head. The whole thing was everybody, and one other thing that makes me so excited is that without I don't think I ripped off Lil Darlin, but everybody who listens to it goes, it's kind of like Lil Darlin. I was like, yes, good, thank you. That was exactly what I wanted because I wanted to get students at a younger level who might not be jumping right into Lil Darlin as whatever it might be, first year jazz students, give them an opportunity to still learn the style in advance. So in the tune, it starts with staccato. Well, it doesn't start with, but it has the when the ensemble comes in on the chord on the melody, it starts with short quarter notes. And every single time that I rehearse the tune with any group, I'm going. They play bop, bop. I'm going ba-da. And then, like you said, the triplet, the do-da, the eighth note on the last note of the triplet is how it comes out of the quarter notes. Bop, 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 triplet, right? So that's exactly how I wrote it, so that when we practice that, it's literally right there. It's like, here's the beat, here's what you're going to think. Now act on it when you come out of this measure. And so
people think of swing as like just, oh, it's just lazy. It's just like, no, it can be quantified. I mean, I'm not saying you can quantify all of that is swing, but the act of swinging is definitely a thing. And just if you want to play 3 short quarter notes in a row, and that's how you're going to get credit with a young band, like do that at a festival and you're going to get high marks. I mean, just doing that.
Yeah. Put space, all approach it at the same moment. And I heard somebody say this once, and it's not, and they said it's not as simple as this, but for students, it can be. Slow swing, subdivision is a triplet. Fast swing, it's even eighth notes.
Yep.
And there's some nuance to that, we all know, but it's certainly a good way to approach a very young band rehearsal for sure.
Well, that makes sense because the slower you are, the heavier you're going to swing, and the faster you are, the more straight eighth is. I mean, you got it right on.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Peter, thank you for being here. Appreciate it so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Kyle.
Here's Hush. We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.